So. Welcome back. We are Comp 397. That's web game programming in the summer 2022 semester at Centennial, and it's week 4, part 1 of our broadcast and recording together. And in this part, we're going to be talking about a couple of things, some administrative things, as well as we're going to be working with Blender to create more stuff. Again, one thing to note before we move on, I know I've had some questions about Blender, and the answer is we're building up our capabilities so that we can make anything we need for your games that you're creating, not just downloading stuff from the asset store, or even just modifying what we can grab from the asset store with Blender, because we're doing 3D this semester. All right, so last week what we did was for Lab 3, we got together, we created a enemy robot, which was very simple and silly, but we did it. We used a simple sketch as to, to create the robot as a reference. We started with a mesh. We didn't download any textures, but we did add multiple materials, and we didn't really do UV mapping because we ran out of time. It took us quite a bit of time to put together the mesh and everything else. We're going to do less of that today. It should be a little bit easier for us to get going. Famous last words. We also kind of pushed things to Unity, the FBX version, and we built a simple nav mesh, but we did it with the new nav mesh component system in Unity. That's what we used last week. We added a nav mesh agent to a robot and made the robot follow things around, or follow the character around anyway. And then in Unity, we created a simple menu scene with a button to go from one scene to the other scene. So very simple. And we did not have a chance to build to WebGL and GitHub pages. We need to do that today. That's something we need to kind of push out and talk about the challenges around that. And when it comes, specifically when it comes to 3D, how do we do stuff? All right, so that was last week. Again, we're sitting at assignment 1, part 2, and assignment 1, part 3 is going to be due week 7 at this point. That's when it's happening. So that's kind of a bit of an update, like we said before. Assignment 2 should have been due this week, right? But we moved it off till next week. So that's when assignment 2 or assignment 1, part 2 is due. Again, it's worth a little bit more because there's functionality in the second part, not just some basic stuff with your layouts that you had out from the first assignment that you guys created for me. Thank you very much for that. So we're sitting at week 4. This week's about cameras as well. Last week was more about lighting on the course shell, but this week is all about camera. How do we control the camera? And we're going to do some stuff with our make a little mini map again. And you guys should have done a mini map in Comp 305. Yes? Did you guys do a mini map in Comp 305? Maybe you did. Check mark if you did a mini map in Comp 305. X. Okay. We're going to do one now. So you should have. That's part of what we talk about, and I do anyway, Comp 305, and make a little mini map from you guys. But if you didn't do it, it's okay. I'll go through the process of how to do that in Unity today. Thank you for that feedback. All right, so in the course shell, it's anatomy of a camera, the camera component, perspective versus orthographic projection, the near plane versus the far plane, and backface culling, and all that stuff that you guys should know about. There's some really good information there. Take a look when you have a chance. This week, what we're going to do for Lab 4 in Blender, we're going to download the Archway reference, because we're going to make an Archway in Blender from eCentennial. I have it up there for you guys. So if you actually look on eCentennial, there's an Archway reference. Let's start with that right now, this piece. So if I download this one, again, so let's download it. And I'm going to put this inside of our Comp 397 sandbox like we had before. Here's our Archway reference. So this is kind of what I've been doing this year. And let's go into Blender. And just like we've done before, I want to bring that Archway reference in. Whenever we bring a reference, we want to attach it to some kind of plane. In the old days, we called it bringing it in as images as planes. So we could actually search for that images as planes. And there you can see that there isn't anything like that anymore. There used to be, where you brought an image in as a plane. And but so we can still do it. What you can do for now, if you open up your basic Blender project, is let's hide the cube for a second. let's hide everything, the camera, the cube, and the light, right? We'll keep the cube there because we're going to use the cube as a basic starting point. And what I want to do now is add a new plane. Here's our plane like we did last time. And we want to look at it from the front, right? Which is, this will be the front view where we have our X and our Y coordinates here. And just like before, the plane is 2 meters by 2 meters. That's not going to suffice anymore. But we can bring the archway and resize the plane to what we want, okay? So if we look at the archway image, let's just look at that by itself first. So again, I'm going to bring up the stuff from our sandbox. So here's our sandbox. Here's the archway reference. Let's bring that up. This is what it looks like. It's pretty basic. This is our archway. You can see that this is just a stock photo. It's not perfect. Okay, I got to mention that it's not perfect. It's not perfect because we don't have a side view, okay, and we don't have a top view, but we also know how tall this should be. This should be about or something around 10 meters tall, in that range. So this is 10 meters approximately. And if you think about this, it's about half as wide as it is tall, which means this should be something like 5 meters wide. So let's say 5 meters by 10 meters. It's not exactly square, right? So if I have the plane that I have right here in Blender, you can see it's square. Can't make it square. We have to make it more rectangular. And if I go back to my archway reference here, you can see what this looks like. Now, there's a bunch of things we can do with this archway reference. One thing we can do is we can trim it, right? So we only see the archway reference itself, because we want to make it easier for us to kind of create something that's very similar to this, right, in Blender. And we also have to think about some strategies. If I was going to create something like this in Blender, how I would do it. So remember, this is just a plan. So question for you guys, since we've been doing this a couple times, this is week 4, is how would you go about this? And anyone can answer. How would I, if I was going to do this in Blender, what type of tools and things would I start with? What are your thoughts? And where would I start? How about that? Instead of me leading it this time around, I want to get some information from you guys. What would you guys do? If you're going to make this in Blender, what would you do? Maybe someone can answer. You can come on the mic too, guys. If it's easier. Anybody? By the way, there's no wrong answers here. You know, like, again, you got to think of these simple shapes. So Nicanor says, I'd use cylinders for the columns. Absolutely. That's a really good thing. Addis is just like the robot we made, kind of, yeah. But where would you start off? Mithul says, add the reference, the image, and add cylinders along the image and add mesh the archway. Yeah, we could do that. We could do all that kind of stuff. One thing to note is that we know that the archway is symmetrical. So we can split the archway in half. We know that. So we can start off with this. Kevin says, I'd add the image on the plane, use the blueprint, use cylinders for the column, and mirror the mesh. Good. That's exactly what I would do, right? What about using both cylinders with mirrors? Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah. But I would definitely mirror, because it's very symmetrical. Whenever we have a symmetrical object, whether it's organic or whether it's hard surface like this, and the difference between hard surface modeling and organic modeling is a hard surface is just that. It could be a robot. It could be an archway like this, a doorway, a building, a machine of some kind, a car, you know, whatever, hard surface modeling. Organic modeling would be more like modeling a person or, you know, a cloud or something that's softer looking or whatever, or a plant, a tree. So that's more like an organic model. Maybe that has some movement and some bones and those kind of things inside of it. But you can also argue that we could model a tree kind of in a hard surface modeling kind of context as well. But let's go back to this thing here. So we could definitely trim this image, right? Because we have it in just the program here. And again, it's not perfect. It's not amazing by any means, but it's kind of the width is 393 pixels and the height is 500. It's almost like a 500 by 400, kind of reference. And if we were to trim this, right, and remove all the extraneous, other extraneous information like the background and so on, we can do this. So I've given you a start, and what I'd like to do is do exactly that. So let's remove the background. And again, there is some ways of removing the background. Juan says we could also use torus for the top and use the cut tool to give it a close shape to the arch. Yeah, you can do that. We're not going to do it that way, but because I want to kind of give me this this idea of these blocks that are going to be part of this, right? And there's the keystone in the middle we have to think about as well. Yep, we'll do that. So let's say I want to remove the background. One thing to note is the background, there's a couple ways to remove it. We have it's a stock photo, so there's some stuff in the background as well, right, that we have to remove. So we could do that, right? Again, we can spend some time removing the background, and I could delete portions that are the same. That's just using a tool like the this tool right here. We could do that, but then you can see it's going to take us a bit of time to do. So because it's a stock photo, right? Because again, there's this stock images. It's going to take a long time for us to do. I could also trace it, with an outliner tool. For example, the lasso tool is a pretty good one. A polygon lasso. Polygon lasso tool is pretty good to kind of use to kind of do that too. It's going to take some time, and I don't want to waste time here, so I'm not going to do it because it's probably not going to add much value in terms of what it's going to look like, right? So I could do that. It's going to help. It would help, definitely help if with that thing, only because then you can make it transparent. But at the end of the day, it's not really that urgent to do. What's better actually is for us to trim it. So again, what we can do is we can look at trimming it. So this is kind of like cutting it, and we want to get as close to the model as we can. And the reason for this is because this way we don't have extra information in there that we don't need. So very simple, trimming is what we're going to do here. So something that looks like this. So we're trimming the model as best as we can. And now we can see that it's kind of constrained to the size of our image, right? And if I click on the model, it's 311 by 444, right? Approximately, which isn't terrible, right? Which is a pretty good size. So save that. And you guys want the trimmed version, it's no problem. Here's the Archway reference for you in the trim version, right? You can use a website, sure. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. I'm just showing you that, you probably don't need it anyway. But this is where we want to start. So then how do I bring this into Blender? Again, what I want to do is think about the proportions. So if I go to here, the proportions for this thing is something like 311 by 444, right? So we want to translate this into something of meters, something like, the height is something like 444 pixels. We want to convert pixels to meters. We want to make this at least double, right? Or if we want to make this something like 8 meters, then we can adjust it actually for us. Let's make it 1,000, height, and see if we can make the height the same way. So again, I'm going to let's modify the canvas to do that. So I'm going to modify the canvas to be bigger. So I'm going to say the canvas size right now is 311. It's exactly the same size by 444. And let me just fix this up for you. So we'll make it something like 2,000 by 2,000 for now with the canvas. Okay, so I've trimmed away the stuff that I don't need. I only have this thing, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it bigger, but I'm going to make it so that the image is sized so that it's properly sized. So I'm going to go to something like 1,000, just to give you a sense of it. Something like there, 1,000 by 700. Okay, so what does this tell us? That if it's 10 meters high, it's 7 meters wide. That's why I wanted to do this. So that way we have a proportional model, right? And then what I can do is once I have this, I can modify canvas and trim our canvas. So now it's 700 by 1,000. Save. You can also rejig what I gave you, but here's the updated reference one more time. There's the updated reference the second time. You can see that it's bigger than the last time. The last time was 45K. Now it's 100K. Oh my God. Like it's not that, that's not that crazy. But all I did was make it so that it's proportional to what we want. Okay, I don't need this anymore. Goodbye. And what I want to do now that I know it's 1,000 by 700, I estimated in my head 10 meters by 5, but it's actually 10 meters by 7 because that's more accurate. So if I want to make it 10 meters by 7, we can model it here by using our trusty numeric scale, by using the N key. That's the N key. The N key brings up our transform, right? And we can do it here. We can say that the height of the thing is 10 meters, right? Let's undo that change, sorry. The height is 10 meters, that'll be okay. And then the width is 7 meters. So we get the exact size that we need for the drawing that we're gonna have, right? We also want this thing to be flipped. So we're gonna flip it, in other words, rotate it across the x-axis 90 degrees, just like we've done in the past. There it is. So this is the plane, and we're gonna move it up because we know the height is 10 meters. We're gonna move it up by 5 meters. So on the y-axis, where the location, instead of being at 0, it's gonna be at 5. I mean, the z-axis is going to be at 5. You guys aren't correcting me, which is okay. So there it is. There's that. There's the model. I'm going to go into a shaded view for the layout, right? And I'm going to pop in the image as a plane now. So again, I'm going to go start with this model does not have a material. So I'm going to go to the material section. I'm going to add a new material here, a new material slot. And we're going to call this material the Archway reference. So we know what it is. There's the Archway reference. And I'm going to use a base color image texture where I'm going to open up the image texture inside of our downloads folder, which is inside of Comp 397 Sandbox. It's the Archway reference, which I'm going to open the image. There it is. And you can see in the texture slot that even though I don't have it, it's still there. So I can still say that I want to make a new texture slot if I was going to apply the texture and have the Archway reference as the slot. I don't want it to be duplicated because this is kind of the way it's being duplicated. It's a single image, right? As an example, from a mapping perspective, I don't want it to repeat. I want it to be clipped, right? So it's only one thing. And same thing with my material. I don't want it to repeat. I want it to clip. So it's going to be exactly what it's going to look like. And that's it. That's my Archway model. I can see it from both sides, which is good. All right, so now that I have this, let's save the Blender file, save, and we'll call this the archway.blend. Archway.blend file. And this is where we start. Okay, let's also, if you move the three-dimensional cursor by accident, let's put it in the middle again. So Shift S, and we can put it Shift S will move the cursor to the world origin. Again, we want to do that to the bottom. And this is where the Archway will start. All right, so we have that's our reference object, right? This is our reference object. We can call it reference or Archway reference. It doesn't matter, but you want to have an Archway reference that is here in the outliner. In the cube, let's bring that cube back. So there's the cube. And we're going to use the cube, at the beginning. But we could also make it, we got to think about what we said. We can use cylinders. If I use a cylinder instead of a cube and I mirror the cylinder in edit mode, then what I can do is I can make a copy of the cylinder that I use here. I can make a copy of it over here on the left-hand side. And then when we get to the top, we can kind of extend the top of the cylinder and the bottom of the cylinder and a bunch of other stuff. So let's do that. So let's get, we'll get rid of the cube. So we'll delete the cube. Delete the cube. There we go. And once we've deleted the cube, then we can add a new cylinder in. So add in a mesh, which is a cylinder. So we add that cylinder mesh in there. Now, one thing to note when we zoom in here and see the cylinder itself, be careful with the number of cuts again, right? So the cylinder right now has 32 vertices. We want it to be more granular like this and lower poly. So absolutely, Etta. So we want to go to something like 16 vertices. And again, if I was going to go into a very kind of this mesh, this was kind of what it would look like. Okay, so again, just to repeat, right, is we added in our reference. Here's our reference, right? We've made it so that it's the exact size we need, which is 7 meters by 10 meters tall. So 10-meter tall archway that we're going to use in our game, right? And we've removed the basic cube. I'm going to reuse the same material, which was just called material, and we're going to call this the archway material. Archway material, there it is. And again, all we have is a cylinder that's at the bottom that has 16 vertices. Let's go back to you guys before we move on. Are you with me? Are you good? Are you guys good? What are your thoughts? If you are, check mark. If you're not, I'll wait a little longer. Just the last step. Okay. Nicanor is good. Materials for cylinder, no problem. We just had the archway material. That's all we did. All right, so there we go. Okay, so I think most of you are good. Some people are watching. That's okay. Let's move on. So now that we've got that cylinder, let's go into edit mode just for the cylinder itself. So instead of cylinder, we'll call this the archway, right? That's what the cylinder is going to be. It's going to turn into the archway, right? We could construct it with multiple parts, right? Where we add some parts in there. We have like the legs of the archway, pillars, and then we have the archway itself, the keystone. We can do everything separately if we want to. And then maybe in a real world scenario, we wouldn't speed run like we're doing it here, and we would just create something that's very simple. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go into edit modes, which means I'm going to go out of layout and go into modeling. And in modeling, I want to switch into kind of the viewport modeling that we're seeing right here. I'm going to go into front view like this, right? Here's our front view. So this is in orthographic view, right? You can see the cylinder is the way it is still. And before I move on, I want to mirror. So again, I'm going to go into the modifier, which is the little wrench on the right-hand side. And I'm going to change the modifier into a mirror modifier. I'm mirroring on the x-axis, which is on this side, right? And notice it says clipping. I'm going to leave clipping off for now. Okay, this is important to do. And what I want to do is I want to move the pillar into place and resize it. Okay, so again, I'm going to press the G key and I'm going to go across the x-axis. So G and then X. And then as I move, you can see that the mirror has been created nicely. And I want to move the pillar up into place. So again, the G key across the Z axis. So that's going to move it in. And you got to consider where you're going to put it. There's this part. What I'd like to do is when I move the pillar into place, I want to also X-ray. So I want to be able to see through the pillar itself, like so, right? So I want to be able to X-ray through. One thing to note is in options, right? We have some options here as well. So you have actually a mirror option up here too. There is that. In this part, in the viewport overlays, right, we have some additional things we can see as well. So in our geometry, as an example, when it comes to how you're looking at this and so on, you can see that faces, mesh edit mode is faces. And if I go to the geometry and I go to wireframe, I can turn the wireframe on here, right? So again, I'm into here, which is gizmos, and then there's here, which is overlays. So under overlays, you can see that there's grid, the floor, 3D cursor, annotations if I want to add them in, statistics if I like them, origins. There's an opacity for the wireframe. So if I change the opacity down, I can kind of make it more opaque or less opaque, so semi-transparent. It says fade inactive geometry. I could do that. So fade inactive geometry. Anything that's not active, I can fade it away, right? So we can do that. So the background is basically what we're talking about. If it's inactive, I can fade it out. So I can go, so it's kind of in the background, but it's not taking up a lot of stuff, or I can bring it up brighter if I really want. Let's make it kind of fade away to something like 0.7. Again, this is in the viewport overlays tool up here, okay? Motion tracking, orientation, mesh edit mode. You can see hidden wire, vertex groups, mesh analysis, edge length for measurement, face area and face angle. And you can also turn on normals here if we want to. This is very useful later on, edge marks and face marks. And there's also gizmos. Gizmos allows you to do things like move, the move gizmo, which we can turn on. I think it's very useful for us. There's also, you can also turn on the rotate and scale gizmo if you like to. It's totally up to you how you want to show this. There's also this piece, which you can say the object type visibility. You can turn these off and on too. It helps you a lot of times with nowadays. It's really kind of cool tools. Also here in the viewport shading mode, we can also, kind of turn on scene lights. As an example, the viewport shading, the strength of the viewport shading, the world opacity, and the blur, if we want to have any kind of blur. And notice that the render pass here is combined, which you can actually make it so that it's different. This is kind of going to affect our view. But for now, all we need is what we have right now, which is what we have. I want to scale in. So again, let's scale where we have this, but we want to move this kind of in the middle as much as possible, in the middle of our pillar, right? So let's scale in. We can see that both sides scale nicely. And even if it's too much or not enough, we can always rescale it back out. I want to move it down just so that it's kind of right here at the base of this other area here where it's a little wider. And you can see what this does. It creates a cylinder that goes on both sides, right? Here it is. I want to deselect all at this point. So there's my deselect all. And I want to use B select or box select mode to select the top part of the cylinder. So I've got the base set up, right? And again, if you disagree, like if you think it should be moved over, and maybe when I'm looking at this, you can see that the diagram isn't perfect, like I said. And so we're going to focus on the right side, and the left side is going to draw itself more than anything else. So again, if I was to select all, let's move it over just a tad bit more, just so it's slightly more centered. I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see the difference, right? So here you can see that this is slightly more centered. And we want to make it so that the bottom is matching the bottom of this piece, and the top is matching the top tapering of, let's say, something like this, okay? So again, how do we do that? So again, I'm going to just try and just grab the top as carefully as I can, and we're going to just pull it up with this little tool until it kind of hits the top, maybe even up to here. Again, there's a bit of three-dimensionality to this image, so you can see we're going to lose some, resolution. I'm also going to scale this in, so I'm going to use the scale tool, so the S key, and I'm going to scale it in so it tapers. And you want to try and get the taper so it's mostly right. Again, you may have to move the entire object around, but you can see what I'm doing is I'm trying to taper it in so we get the shape of the pillars as close to the reference as I can. Okay, so this is the shape of the pillars here. I think the entire thing, let's just highlight the whole thing and move it to the right a little bit more, right? Just a bit. Again, it's not going to be perfect, so don't fret. Don't worry about it, because we're going to fix it. And then again, let's scale it up again, just a tad bit more. And it's going to be, again, you can see how it scales somewhat imperfectly at the bottom and so on. At the bottom, same thing. It's a little bit too wide for the bottom, so let's do the same thing. We're going to go and just highlight the bottom and scale in and out, so we can see that we're going to go something like this, at least partly, and then move it to the left, the whole thing. So we're going to just move it to the left just a touch, so we can kind of get it so that it is proper, and then scale up a bit more on the bottom. Oops, undo. So just the bottom. There we go. And I'm getting closer for it to be the right size. It's also, other things you can do is it's skewed. You can also skew this thing as well, right? So what you could do is you could say, well, I want to move this part over a little bit, because you can also make it skewed, right? Because that's what it is. The pillar is kind of skewed. We're going to fix this in a second. So we're going to move it over a little bit more, So it's kind of a little bit closer to where the size of the image is. And we're going to scale it up. Again, I'm just scaling the top part until it's closer, closer, closer to what we want. And I want to move this up a little higher. So just to the base of the pillar here, there's a little bit of roundedness here, and we're just going to ignore this. And we're going to say that this is the pillar itself. And so now I have a pretty good representation of it. We can still do even more if you really want to. So I'm just highlighting the bottom and deselecting the top and moving it a bit in. So now we can see that there is the pillar. If I take it into 3D, it looks like this right now. Okay. That's what it looks like. All right, and you can see we're seeing right through it because we're using an X-ray tool. I've been using the X-ray tool the entire time. Take the X-ray tool away, you can't see through it, and you actually can't select everything in there as well, which is bad. It's different than using the wireframe tool. If I use a wireframe tool, then I lose the background geometry from my reference. All right, so that's the difference between using the wireframe tool and the X-ray tool. So X-ray tool is, I think, the way to go in this case. Okay. But we want to capture the bottom, and we want to capture the top, and we want to also capture, kind of different parts of it. So what we want to do is we want to extrude several times to capture the bottom part until we get to this piece here that looks like a square. Okay. And there's some tricks we can use. So again, we're going to deselect all. We're going to select the bottom. So we're right at the bottom one, and I want to extrude it a bunch of times. So let's try this. So we're going to say extrude, right? And when we pull it down, you can see that I get a little bit more resolution here, right? And I'm doing it so that it's just going to give me an edge. And then I'm going to extrude it again down as well. So there's that bit of an edge, right? And if I was to do this and then just scale out the bottom, so scale this out, you can see we get a bit of that shape that we want, to some degree. And I want to do the same thing. So all I'm doing is extruding and scaling. So the E key and then the S key, the E key and then the S key over and over again. Watch. So I'm going to do the E key where I extrude down, right? And then I want to do the S key. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but don't worry about that. If I was to do the S key here, you can see that this is no good, right? Because I need a crease to help me out. So let's undo that extrusion. So if I extrude, I want to kind of extrude twice. I want to extrude down to here, right, as an example. And then I want to extrude again when I come down here. So I want to come down to this point and then click extrude again and then press enter. So extrude and then enter duplicates my geometry. It kind of creates a layer of additional geometry around the same kind of cylinder, right? And then if I scale, you can see that I can scale down to where I want, let's say scale down, and then extrude the way I like. So I kind of make it this way, right? So I can kind of do this, and then I can add scaling at the bottom to kind of create that effect that I want as much as I want. So what this looks like is something that looks like this at the bottom so far, okay? Okay, so it's not perfect again, but it's, hey, we're just using our 2 cents, if you will, to just, kind of push it up and just to create that bevel, right? As much as you want. You can also use beveling if you really want to. I'm just going to use this right now. And then I want to extrude. I want to push it down here to this, about this point. And I want to extrude and press enter. And then I want to scale so that it's a little bit bigger. And I want to push it down, right, like this. And then I want to scale in so that it's like this. You can see that I can kind of create the shapes that I want with basic movements is what I want to do. So again, when you're looking at from the side is something that looks like this now, right? All I'm doing is extruding, scaling, extruding, scaling multiple times. All right, let's do it again. So again, I'll extrude. And again, it really depends on how much resolution you want here for this thing. It looks like there's another layer. I'm just going to go straight down, right, to this part right here. So this is the bottom part. And now I want to extrude again and then scale again so that we can grab a surface like this. Notice that on the left-hand side here, it's larger than, or not as big as the right-hand side. We want to be as proportional as possible and yet still keep the essence the essence of what we're doing here. It may not be perfect because it's slightly off center. The base is slightly off center from the pillar, but that's okay. We're going to make ours more proportional, more symmetrical. Doesn't matter, right? So we've kind of done that, and I'm going to E to extrude down a little bit to create that little lip, and then E to extrude, enter, and then scale. So we're going to scale up, out a little bit, and then again, I'm just going to push this down so we get that kind of bevel, and I want to scale it outwards just a bit so it covers the thing that I want, right? And then E to extrude, let's say down a little bit to give me that shape that I'm desiring. This is what it looks like right now. Doesn't look terrible. It looks way better than this, right? Now, what about this part? This is kind of a square that we have at the bottom, and it looks like there is a slab that's at the bottom of this piece right here. Well, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could add a, an actual other piece here at the bottom, or we could just decide to do what we've been always doing and make it rounded like this. I like the fact that there will be some kind of squarish slab here, which means that I'm going to add easiest way to do this is to add in a cube and flatten it out and then combine those two things together. But we have a problem, and the problem is the bottom. Let's bring it into focus here by going into solid mode for a second. Okay, so if I go to solid mode, you can see what we have. We have the bottom, which is, well, an n-gon. And so in order for me to mesh together this n-gon with a cube and make it look good, there's a couple ways to do this. One way is to get rid of the n-gon. We get rid of the n-gon. So again, I'm going to go into face select mode. Here's face select mode. And you can see that I can select whatever face I want here, get that n-gon, and then get rid of it. So get rid of all the faces. So now there's no face at the bottom of the pillar, okay? And then add in a cube at the bottom, but then compress it so it looks like a slab, okay? Which is what I'm going to do now, right? So that's kind of how it would look. Let's try this out and see what that looks like, right? So again, in order for me to add it in, I'm going to go back into viewport shading mode so I can see it. Okay, I'm not going to go into X-ray mode for this time right now. I'm just going to get into this. Make sure that you have your mouse, your 3D cursor in the middle, and I'm going to Shift A and add a cube. It's too big, clearly, but when we add it, because we're still in mirroring mode for the entire game object. How did I get rid of it? Okay, let me back up. So here's where it was. I went to Control Tab, or you can also go up here and select the face select mode up here. And then you want to select the bottom face and press delete, right? And then when you press delete button, it'll ask you, what do you want to delete? And I want to delete the faces. That's what I want, okay? And by the way, you can always redo. So if I do a redo, it kind of understands the history, but I've kind of undone. So let's just get rid of the face and start over. So I've got rid of the face, right? You can see right up there, kind of neat. And again, Shift A, I'm going to add a cube. And what I want to do with the cube is I'm focusing on this shape here. And if I bring up the numeric controls on the right, again, you have some more control in terms of its position, right? But you don't have as much control in terms of its shape until you go to cube here. So this is our location and rotation and the size. We probably don't need the size to be 2 meters. We can probably make the size 1 meter. Let's go with 1 meter exactly, and which is much better. Again, not perfect because this is bigger than 1 meter, it looks like. But that's okay. Then we can take the cube and slide it into position so that the middle of the cube looks somewhat centered, right? So somewhat centered here. And we want to compress it. So we want to, again, we want to switch to vertex select mode, right? And I want to select the cube itself. So again, remember we selected connected objects, it's Control L, right? It's selected linked objects, that's what it does, right? And we can again move it into place where I can move it kind of down to some degree. So it's just not touching this thing, right? And then I can take let's go into X-ray mode now. This is important. And what I want to do is grab the bottom part of the cube and let's size it so that at least the bottom part of the cube is kind of at the bottom of our reference, something that is like this. Okay. Again, not perfect, but don't worry, who cares, right? And then I want to do the same thing with this piece. So again, you can see that the bottom is square. That's what it looks like right now, but it's not quite where we want it to be. And I want to scale the actual cube itself so that it's the right shape and then move it closer into place. Not quite yet though. All right, and we want to make it so that we can connect the top of the cube, which you're going to get rid of that top. We're going to connect it to the top vertices around, and I'll show you ways of doing that when we get there. So again, we want to scale it. So again, I'm just going to select the entire cube again, and I want to scale it only across the x-axis. So scale across the x-axis, and we're going to scale it so that it matches whatever we have on the x-axis. Be mindful of, what you're looking at here. So if I scale it this way, this is what the slab is going to look like. Okay, so let's make it so it scales maybe a little bit bigger, something like that looks like this, and maybe we can move it into place a little bit more. So a little bit bigger than we need, then move it. That's probably where we're going to do it. We're going to have this a little bit just bigger than we need at the bottom. And we scaled it 1.553 approximately. That's what I worked out to be. Let's make it 1.5. Right, there we go. And let's also make the Y 1.5 as well, just to be exactly accurate. And what this does is it creates a slab that looks like this at the bottom. Okay, again, not fully the exact same, but it's okay. And then when we look at it from the front, it kind of looks like this. And what I want to do is I want to grab this top part, so the top face of the slab, which is this cube here. I want to get this top face, and I want to get rid of it. I want to delete the top part of this thing altogether. All right, so just to be a bit more accurate. So the way to do that is, again, to go into face select mode, select that face, this one. So this face here for the cube, which is one way to do that again is remember what we're selecting is this face right here. That's the top part of the cube itself, this part. Okay, but nothing else. And then what I want to do is delete that face. So you can see that there's no face at the top anymore. Okay. But it's not exactly centered right. So you can see that this needs to come up. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to go back into vertex select mode. Again, lots of ways to do the same thing, guys, but I'm just going to do it this way. I'm just going to go into vertex select mode and come up as close as possible to the lip of this thing here. So again, I'm going to bring this up, the slab, so it's kind of meeting this part, the lip. And I'm eyeballing it, but you can go into zoom in a little bit so you can see what that looks like. So you can see that that is better as I zoom out. And then you can see that that's kind of where it's going to be, something like this. So how do I connect this part to this? Well, we need to look at the number of vertices here. I have, if you look at it, a way of connecting this vert to the corner, this vert to the corner, but I have to split off this one, and this one into three parts, three sections. So I want to, I look at each of the sides, right, each of the edges, and I want to break the edges up into something like 3 pieces. So if you look at that, and I've selected the top parts, I want to go now into edge select mode. I've selected the top edges, all these top edges, right? And you can also do it manually if you didn't get here like this, right? And then what you want to do is press the W key, right, which allows me to subdivide. By default, it subdivides the edges into two, 1, 2. We want to go into so that 2 points, just to give you a sense of what that looks like, takes the edges and divides them into, if I put 2 cuts, that means there's going to be at least 2 of these, 1, 2, and I need 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's move into 3 cuts. You can't see them, but trust me, it's number of 3 cuts. And if I was to change this into vertex select mode, you can now see the cuts. So I've got 1, 2, 3 of these cuts plus the corners, and that gives me, that's all the way around, right? And why? Because now we can start connecting these things up. Okay. Yes, I did. Jesus, I did. I deleted the top face. And so the way I would do this is deselect all now and start making those connections. And the way to do that, let's turn off X-ray mode because it's going to make some trouble for us. And I'm also going to hide the reference for now so we can see what it looks like. This is what our object looks like. And what I want to do is you can select the first one and the second point, first point, second point, right? I use the W key or the subdivide. You can also find it under the, when you go into edge select mode, as an example, let's say I select an edge, you can go into the edge, and then you can also find the subdivide in here as well. Okay, so under edge, you can see subdivide. That is also a way of getting to it, but I use the W key. Let's go back into vertex select mode. So I want to select these 2 verts. I want to select the start and then the end. You can see I've got those two vertices selected. I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see them. So I got this vert here at the bottom of the pillar and this vert here at the base of the one of the first edge or the first vertex in the middle. And I want to press the F key. And what it does is it creates a edge between these 2 vertices. Okay, that's what it does. The F key creates those edges. And I want to do the same things for these ones. So I want to create, select this one and select this one and create an edge, F, and select this one and select this one and create an edge. And these are just edges. There's no faces right now. So again, just making those edges all the way around. Okay, so first I make the edges. Okay, that's what I do. And you want to deselect the one. You don't want to always keep everything selected. So select one, make the edge, then select the other one, make the edge, then select the next one, and then I'm pressing the F key. So I'm selecting, which deselects everything else, then selecting the next part, and then press F. And I'm doing that systematically around the base of the object. So I'm actually melding or welding those 2 things together slowly, and just systematically going around. It won't take long to do, but you want to do it in a nice way. Now I've got it done, but there's no faces. If you actually look at this, there's actually just edges here, right? And in order for me to make faces out of these edges, we just select the 4 quads, or to make a quad, we have 4 vertices. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm selecting 4 vertices and then pressing the F key again, which makes the face. There's our face, first face. And then you want to do the same thing with these ones. Now you could have fast-tracked this and done it from the beginning, but I'm doing it this way to show you how to create faces, maybe remind you how to do that. Again, I'm getting all these 4 verts. Once I get these 4 vertices, press the F key, and then you create your face. Make sure you don't select other vertices by accident. All right, so again, and again, I've got these faces, and we're gonna inspect it afterwards. Okay. Almost done. F. I use the F key. So I select the first vertex and the second vertex, and then you use the F key to connect those two together. And then once you have a bunch of these edges, you have at least 4 edges, you can go F, you can kind of select all of them and press F again. Right, that's how it goes. Last one. So one thing to note is if you're not sure, you can always look at the object through and kind of see through the object to see where the faces are, or you can also turn on face mode. But let's just go this way. So I got one more to do here, and I've got these faces. Okay, so this is where the faces are. And if I turn on face select mode, right? So here's face select mode and deselect all. You can see here that I've got all of these faces nicely selected. Let's go into solid mode just so you can see it. There's solid mode, and you can see that I've got these faces. And because we did one side, then we did the other side at the same time, and it's not too terrible. However, is there a problem with this? Is there a problem, guys? What is the problem with this structure that I put together? Problem is, if we ever want to UV unwrap this thing, right, then we're going to have a n-gon right here. An n-gon, okay, and it's spelled like this, n-gon. An n-gon is a polygon that has multiple vertices, but one big face. It doesn't make any sense. We want a quad. A quad, for all of our stuff, we want to get used to making quads, right? And a quad is 4 vertices. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all we want. We have quads everywhere right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, except for the sides. Okay, because the sides have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top and 1, 2 at the bottom. We don't like this. This is not a good thing. So what we want to do is do the same divisions that we did on the top on the bottom edges. So the way we do is we can do edge select mode. I've moved to edge select mode up here at the top. You can also do control tab and go to edge select mode. And I want to select these bottom edges now, right? By just shift clicking all of them. Right, there's all those edges connected. So all the edges, right? And then I want to do that same trick where I want to subdivide those edges at least 3 times, right? And then I want to go back to vertex select mode. And there we are. Look at those verts right now. Quick way of doing this would be to make cuts, cut, as opposed to getting rid of the face and then do that edge trick I did again, right? We want to make cuts. So again, I can use the K key to make a knife cut between this edge and this edge, and then press enter, and then keep doing that all the way around. Right? Keep doing that all the way around. So okay, the knife cut, I'm just going to use a knife cut between those 2 verts and just go all the way around until we have the proper, kind of scenario here. Now I'm going into more detail for a reason. I want to go into these details because it enables you to do more kind of advanced modeling than how we did it last day. Last day was a very rough robot, and even that took us a long time to do. So not a big deal. I think it was still pretty good, but I think, we want to think about how UVs are going to be mapped. Eventually, if we're going to unwrap and attach some kind of texture or whatever here, then we want to make sure that the textures kind of flow in the right way. And also, we want the edge flow to be correct as well. I'll talk about edge flow in a second. Right, so there's that. And we can see now I've done all of those edges kind of all the way around, right? But the edge flow is disrupted because of the bottom. So notice what the bottom did. As soon as I added those edges, it kind of created the extra geometry at the bottom immediately. Okay, that's kind of what it should have done for you. If it didn't do this, for you, you need to do these. You need to make these lines because you want quads at the bottom of this thing, just like you do at the top. So you have quads everywhere now. Okay. Nice. We have our bottom part of our pillar. And when it comes to edge flow, if I want to select an edge, let's say I want to select the entire edge. So edge select mode. And if I do control shift, Control, Shift, and select, you can see that I select my entire edge now, right? That whole edge is selected, and it goes all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. That's edge flow. But one thing it doesn't do at the top is it doesn't go across, because we have this n-gon at the top of the pillar, right? That's what it doesn't go. So it doesn't flow this way yet. But we need to do the same trick for the top of the pillar as we did for the bottom. We're not there yet. Okay. So right now, this is what you should have. You should have something that looks like this. If I look at it from a front view, right? And you can see that we have two pillars that are kind of symmetrical, both the left side and the right side. I'm going to bring back the reference diagram so we can see it, and go back into viewport shading so we can see what we have, and we're pretty good. If I want to add these little details here, you can see that let's just turn off my archway for a second. Notice that there is a detail here and a detail here and some other details in here. We could do that, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is this part. I want this ring, and I also want this ring, and maybe the ring on the top. That's what I want, okay? So how do I do that? How do I do this ring? Well, Control R, right? So if I do Control and then R, I can do, kind of set up a couple of rings. I can do it here. I'll drag that ring down to this, right? And again, I want to use X-ray mode to do this, making sure that nothing is selected. I want to do Control R. You can see that I have a loop cut and slide that I'm doing. And I want to take it and I'm going to slide it down to where I have the bottom part of this detail. Okay, something that looks like this. And I can kind of position it kind of with the tool. And let me just zoom out. Let's do another one. So loop cut and slide up here, and then click it and bring it down so that it is right here. So again, this is what I'm thinking of where it's going to go, like right in here, approximately. And you can see that you can adjust these loops so that they're fairly good. I'm going to make my loop a little bit bigger. And what I want to do is I want to extrude that middle part. So I could select both those two things. So I can say something like, let's box select this part, right? So again, I'm in edge select mode for this, right? But I could be in vertex select mode as well. I only want to see that part extruded. And the trick here is if I was to just scale, then I get something like this, right? And that's not what I want. I could extrude and then I could move it out, but that seems also weird, right? However, I could, if I extrude and then scale, I get that thing that I want, but it scales it kind of weird and fat, right? So I want to scale only across the x-axis first. So scale this way. Again, I want to make it so I can see it, what it looks like. That's pretty good. And it looks like my scale is 1.15, let's say 1.15 across the x-axis. And I can duplicate that scaling across the y-axis, 1.15, so that I can have a symmetrical scale. So it kind of looks like this now. Is it what it looked like in the picture? No, but if I really want to, I can cut this one in half and then scale that out if I want to create some kind of structure. So again, now with these highlighted, I can just do another Control R, where it's like another loop in the middle. I can select it, press Enter, and then scale that one out. So I can scale this one out a little bit so that it is a little bit tapered. Okay, lots of tricks, but it's, you can get it to look not too terribly bad as you move up. If you don't like it, and if you want to make it different, you want to make it so it's thinner, you can do all those things. It's up to you how yours is going to look. Mine's going to look kind of more symmetrical like this. Let's go back up to the top. We have another one we can do up here, very similar, and maybe even another one. Now, this is going to be a tricky part up here when we start getting into this slab, because again, it's not a great diagram. It's not bad because it gives us some kind of idea, but here it's a three-dimensional diagram. where it's kind of skewed this way, kind of away from us. So we can see the bottom part of this, the archway, but we're not drawing it that way. We're drawing it face on, right? So that's kind of where we have a challenge, right? So again, as we go through here, we can think about what to do here that's different. So here I want to make the same detail right near the top. So I can do the same thing. I can deselect all first, and I can do a Control R, which brings me a ring at the in the middle, and then I can just move it up. So it's at the bottom of this part. And then what I can do is zoom into this part up here, and then make another ring in the middle here, Control R, right? And we can zoom it where we feel it's best, something like this at the top. Maybe something like this. And you can see that that's where it's going to go. Again, if I look at it from the front, we can align it if you really want to. I'm just zooming in here. So you can see that this is the case. And then I can deselect all, box select that part, just like we've done in the past. Same process, nothing different. And then what I can do is I can extrude and then press enter. So enter, what it does is it creates additional geometry around everything. And then I can scale only across the x-axis first. So I can scale across the x-axis so I get that shape that I want. Probably something that like this to me looks okay. And then once I've done that, it looks like 1.17. We did 1.15. Let's keep the same ratio, 1.15. And across the y-axis too. But not across the z-axis. The z-axis should be 1, so it's flat, okay? And then if I want to, I can split it up. So I can split it and then just size it by I, scale up a little bit just to make it so it's a little bit rounded. And there you have the top. Okay, so now our pillar is slightly looking better, more detailed, all right? There's still more things we could do here, but we're not going to because of time. Save. Thoughts? What are your thoughts, guys, so far? Happy, not happy? Did you do it differently so far? What are your thoughts? You guys are the designers. And again, you can come on and talk on the mic because if you want to, because there's, it's just us. You did yours differently, Kevin. Happy and differently, easier version. Okay, you did the easier version, no problem. It doesn't matter how you do it to me, as long as it makes sense to you. I'm just doing it more detailed. Kevin, how did you do yours? Did you do yours more detailed, less detailed? Did you do it like with different shapes? How did you do it? Okay, you did a quick way. What quick way did you do it? Okay, let's take a look. Jesus also has a picture. He's mostly extrude. Okay, good. Rough edges for Jesus. No problem. Let's see what Jesus's image looks like, right? I'm going to put this in downloads. And let's see what his looks like. I like to share because I think it's important for us to share best practices and, because there's more than one way to do this. There's no perfect way, okay? Okay, so I see what you've done. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? So very good as you get to the top. Nice, excellent. All right, so let's continue. So now that I've got this part, I want to make the same shapes at the top, and we have to be very careful. How do we connect them? Because we have this extra piece here. My feeling is that it gets pretty skinny, but straight up at the top. So I want to get some extra geometry. I'm going to deselect all, deselect all, get the box select mode or B select, take those top verts, and I want to extrude them. And I want to extrude them up a little bit so that we can make it a little wider. So I'm going to, again, just make it a little bit up this way and then scale it out. So we can kind of create the shape that I'm looking for. Something that looks like maybe this, the top of the object, and then kind of extrude it up again, very straightforward. So it kind of creates that top part of the object. I'm not going to make this frilly part of the top, which is kind of a, kind of an embedded part. You could do that if you want to. I'm not going to. Just to keep it simple, simpler is the way to go. And now that I have this top part with the same number of verts in the top, I'm going to add a slab up here that is a little bit bigger, right? So again, it's up to you how you want to do this, but remember that we don't have a good diagram. So it's up to you how you want to do this thing at the top, but I'm going to add another slab here. So going back to the bottom, I'm going to go to the, the front after I've done that little lip at the top, and I'm going to say Shift A. I'm going to add another cube. There it is. It remembers the size that I wanted, which was 1 meter by 1 meter. I'm going to go with something even smaller, like 0.5 meters, because now I want to use it at the top. So again, I'm going to move this all the way to the top, and I'm going to scroll, kind of move it to the side, right? And I move it kind of in place, this little cube here. And again, what I want to do is just focus on the right side as I move in. Okay, and I'll deselect all, select the top part of the cube, move it down, and just bring it into place here for what I want. I want to select all, this just the cube itself, and I want to make it wider so that it fits kind of at the top, almost like a top slab, but not too big, not as big as the bottom, right? So again, let's bring this whole thing closer, a little closer. And I want to scale across the x-axis first. So again, I'm going to make it so that it's just the top part of the slab. Again, slightly wider than what I have, maybe a little bit more. And just to support, I'm looking to support this whole thing here, right? So there's the part that I want. It's about 2 times, let's make it 2 times wider. And about, again, something like 2 times on the y-axis, otherwise it'll look weird. We have something that looks like this. Okay. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about it. And what I want to do, just like we did before, right, is I want to kind of delete that face. So let's move this up for a second so we don't have to see this. And I want to go into, I want to get kind of stop the X-ray mode for a second. And I want to grab this. I want to do the same trick we did everywhere else. And I want to go into face select mode, select that top face and delete it. So I don't have that top face. And let's also get rid of the reference right now, because we don't need that reference, because I just want to see this part. I want to also, while we're at it, let's delete the top, this bottom face. Let's get rid of that face. And so we have the same thing we did before with the bottom. And what I want to do is from the front now, as an example, I want to put it into place, the slab. So I want to grab this slab and then move it. Let's make sure I'm X-raying here. So again, I just want to do this and move that into place. And I want to go as close as possible so that it layers on top, something like this, okay? Pretty good. And looks like that right now. Now we're doing it upside down, and this is kind of one of the issues, right, we're going to have, but it's going to be very similar in terms of the way we've done it. So deselect all. I want to not go into X-ray mode, and I want to just select the edges here. So I want to select this edge, this edge, this edge, and that edge. So all the edges are selected. And we know we're going to do the same thing to the other edges, this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. So let's prepare. Let's do all those edges, right? And once we've got all the edges selected, let's try doing a subdivide. And we want to do a subdivide into 3 cuts. So 1, 2, 3. There we go. You can see that we've done those cuts now, but only for those edges. And you can see that it does the top too nicely for us. So we don't have to do a lot of work. That saves us a lot of time because we know I would have had to cut them manually before, and I don't want to cut things manually. Okay. Nice. So that's how we did this part. Nice, nice, nice. But it's going to cause us issues when we extrude the top, because the top, if we look at our diagram again, let's bring back our reference. The top is going to be like this, and we want to be able to extrude nicely, but we also need to create some kind of way of merging these two things together, which means we may have to do a merge up here somehow when it comes to the these faces for now, okay? And then we'll fix it at the top, right? So just letting you know that that's going to be an issue if we try to extrude all of these. There's lots of geometry we don't need, right? I want to get rid of stuff we don't need. So let's get rid of that reference for a second. Let's do our work now. So the work that we have to do is the same work that we did before, where we want to connect these edges together, this one, and so on. And I want to go into vertex select mode to help us. So again, one thing we want to make sure that we don't do is select the wrong vertex. Okay, so again, what we want to do is deselect all and then go vertex to vertex. And then we want to make F for the actual thing. And let's try doing it so that instead of doing F multiple times now, let's undo that. We can just do all those vertices all at once. So this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then press F, and we create a face immediately. It's kind of a faster way to do it than the way we did it before, right? So that we can save time in making cuts and all this other stuff. But be careful, don't select edges that are wrong, because you'll get some weird shapes. And like that one, see? By the way, you can undo a selection as well as something else. So again, I wanted this one, this one, this one, this one, and then make sure that we're pretty good. Doing the same process, but this time not actually doing the connections. I'm just doing the faces directly. So I'm just doing a face right there. And then that is what it's doing for us, is it's just saving some time. So we don't have to do this a crazy amount of time throughout the entire process, but rather just a little bit easier. Again, lots of different ways of doing this. It's really up to you how you feel comfortable as a technical artist in this case, because we're just taking the role of a technical artist right now, and to do this work. There we go. So there's our bottom part of our pillar, and it's all connected. But it looks weird. It looks weird because it looks like the faces are inverted, okay? And we may have these faces inverted, and if we do, that would be an issue. How do you check that? Well, if you select all, and if you go to up here, right, where it says our viewport overlays, we can turn on normals, and you can turn on display normals, and you can see where those normals are being displayed. So are they going inward or are they going outward? And it looks like all of our normals are okay. Why did I do this? Because if we don't do this, especially as we're making our model and bring this into Unity, we're going to have transparent faces. So these little lines here are normals, the direction of our normals around the entire way. Okay, you can see that that's what it looks like. We have a lot of normals up here. We want to combine all this into one face for now, and then we want to extrude, and when we extrude, we'll fix it at the top, because well, if we do this, it's going to be too much work. So again, to turn all these on or off, you can go to the overlay up here, and I've just clicked on normals. You can just turn that off. You can also change the size of your normals if you want to see them more easily. Let's turn that off. Nice, there's our normals. And we have this part right here. And I want to combine this top face into one. So it kind of breaks the idea that we said before, which we want to make quads, but we're going to make the quad later, not now. So how do I combine faces? Again, I want to go into face select mode and select only those faces. You can also use circle select to select them all really quickly, just like we did when we made our maze tile, like so. And then what we want to do is there's a couple of ways to do this. We could, I could face orientation option. Yes, you could. Yes. So I want to do a couple of things here. I could select all these, go to edges. So these are all the edges that I want. And I could dissolve the middle edges. So I could say, I want to deselect these ones. What if I just deselected or dissolved the middle edges here? So let me show you something. A lot of ways of merging this face together, because I want to merge the face, but I don't want to get rid of the corners, right? So I'm just selecting only the edges that are in the middle, right? The ones that are crossing like this, right? So I've only got those edges selected at the top. And if I press delete, right, and it says there's deleting, I could delete the edges, or I could dissolve the edges. And if I dissolve the edges, now it becomes one big face. Let me do that again. So again, I selected only the faces or the edges that crosshatch across the top, but not the outer edges at all. And then if I press delete, you can not just delete, but also dissolve. And dissolve, what it does is it removes the edges and keeps the geometry around. So that is what we wanted. We want this edge to be flat like this, so we can extrude from here up into the arch. Okay. Let's go into front mode. Let's turn on back our reference. We can see what that looks like now. And we've got the bottom and the top. It looks pretty good, I think. And now we can start doing this crazy extrusion. So now it's just a process of how I want to select stuff. So again, I want to go into face select mode, select the top face, right? And I want to go in here. And again, I want to extrude up a little bit, kind of, make it bigger. So scale out and keep going up and angling. All right, so let's try this first. We're going to go up straight first, but we're going to make it so that it's bigger. So first I got my face selected and I want to say extrude and then enter. And then I'm going to pull up. So you can see I've got extra geometry there, right? And if I do all this like this, you can see I'm getting my extra geometry on the sides, which is pretty good. All right, if I want to. But maybe, again, that might cause a bit of an issue later on where we have so much extra geometry as we move through. We have our edge flow, and it's good, but we're going to have extra geometry all the way through, okay? So we could do that, or I could scale it, as an example, across the top. And I can scale it across the top so that it's kind of looking like this, right? And then I can pull it up. So I can scale it up. And if I did this, you can see that that would be an issue if I did that, because now you get this like really weird curve. Let's undo that. So I can extrude again and then press enter. And then I can do the same thing. I can kind of move that up. So it kind of looks like there's a block on top of a block. And if you notice, it just did this. That's all it did. All right. Again, the process is I can extrude and then press enter. So E enter. So it gives me extra geometry. We have a lot of extra geometry, by the way, guys. We have to get rid of some later on. And then we're going to extrude again and then pull up. But if I did this, if I put extrude and up, you can see that that is going to make it not the right shape. I want to make it a little bit wider again, right? So let's scale instead. We can scale up and then we can extrude and move up as we're making these stepped, kind of panels, if you will. There's that step panel. So we kind of did this piece. So you have like a bunch of, it looks like a bunch of little steps that we're going up there like this, right? In some kind of manner. And then we're going to do the same thing, extrude, enter, and scale. So we're going to scale out. And then we're going to extrude up, right? So you can see that that's what it looks like. And so we have the next step, right? So we have that next step, which is kind of making those Greek or Roman columns that we're looking at right here. All right, now, what about when we start curving in and it's going to be bigger and flatter and all that stuff? Well, we're going to kind of come in now and then back out again. So again, we're going to extrude, enter, scale in, come out, extrude, come out, right, like this. And then you can see that that is that top part. Okay, and then extrude, enter, scale, where we have that extra geometry. And now we're going to extrude up just to that lip. And we can start to turn it. And the way to do this is to rotate it R across the Y-axis so that we can kind of start turning the object a little bit up this way. Now be careful because we don't want to make it too skewed. And you may decide that you don't want that you want to add another, create this lippy area first and then do it. It's up to you. Again, like I'm not going to give you direction here on what you want this to look like. It's going to be funky over here anyway because we don't have a great diagram, but we do have piles of like these slabs that looks like we have here. So some kind of piles of slabs, and you can see that it's wider. So again, we're going to scale out. So sorry, E to extrude, scale out. So we have that extra geometry to there, let's say. And then E to extrude up to get that lip. And then E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, scale in a little bit. And then E to extrude up. and then rotate across the y-axis just a little bit so it kind of matches that first bit. And then E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, scale out, right, like this. E to extrude, enter, E to extrude up, right, as an example. And then again, rotate a little bit slightly this way. So you can see that that is what it's going to look like right now. And so we're slightly rotating it kind of towards the middle. And then E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, scale in. So until we have that matching the side of this one, maybe a little bit more there. And then E to extrude up. And then rotate across the y-axis until we have that right shape. And then keep on moving up until we have the shape that we want. I'm just going to drag it up here. Maybe rotate it a little bit more. So again, across the y-axis. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, scale in, right? But the problem is if we scale in now, it's going to scale in from both sides. And we don't want that. We want it so that it only scales in from one side, and we can maybe do it later on. So we're just going to do the E to extrude first, like this, and then we'll come in and fix it up later. So I want to kind of do this, rotate, and then maybe even move. So we want to kind of move that into place. Again, we can do that. And then kind of push it out a little bit, rotate that into place. One thing to note is we're doing it from one side. So we should always look at it from the side as well and what this looks like. It kind of looks like this right now, okay? That's what it kind of looks like as we're climbing up and making this archway, okay? So again, we're still selected, E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, enter again, and then we're going to go out this way. I'm getting a lot of extrusions because it gives me extra geometry again to play with, right? Rotate across the y-axis only, and then we want to move this into place by just dragging it into the right position, maybe even rotating it a little bit more around across the y-axis, a little bit more, and moving it in. Again, we're going to come back here and change some of these because it's kind of going in and out, and we're going to do that with some of this in a second. And the same thing goes up here, and we're going to come to the keystone, and we're going to stop in the middle because the keystone is not exactly centered, right? So how do you propose then if, remember that we're wide here and we're narrow here, and then we're going to go wide here and then narrow here and wide here, almost like a thing. What do we do to make this the extra geometry go away? I could get rid of these faces. So, you know, just a preview of what it might look like is later on, what I could do is go into face select mode and then select these faces here and then get rid of them and then just make the connections. That's an easy way of doing it, right? But again, we still have this thing to do. So let's just move in and finish it. So again, E to extrude, enter, E to extrude out, rotate, adjust, right? And maybe make it adjusted so it's kind of like this as much as possible, right? Oops. And then E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, move it out, rotate it, adjust it in place, rotate it again, adjust it, move it into place, move it up a little bit, right? And again, we know it's not going to be perfect, so we're not going to complain or worry about the reference because I know we tend to do that. So E to extrude, enter, E to extrude, come out as much as possible, rotate it so it's where it's going to be, and we're going to come in here, moving it across. I'm just grabbing that little angle until we get to the keystone. And the keystone is going to be the same thing, but we're going to connect. I'm just going to go back into clipping on the right hand where the mirroring is. Click around mirror modifier and clip. There's our clipping. And then what I want to do is when we move it together, it's going to connect. Okay. So again, I'm going to go E to extrude, enter, and then E to extrude out. Be careful not to touch yet until we rotate this thing slightly this way. We know the keystone is going to be bigger. So I want to kind of make it so that the keystone is faced inward like this as much as possible. And then we're going to put it into place so that it is something that looks like this. And as we merge and we press star, then we can move it around, look, and we can see that this part is one, right? And we've kind of done our archway. It doesn't look perfect yet, but we've got part of the archway done. All right. Are you with me? Are you there with me? Have you done kind of something similar? Right. Again, does it have to be exactly like mine? No, it does not. It needs to be, you have to use the same kind of process, but it's up to you how you end up with this thing. Okay, I'm just taking my time showing you different techniques. All right, so now that we have it connected at the top, we want to do that stepping that we talked about before. And to show you this, let's just hide our model for a second. So in the archway, we can hide it. We can see that the second one is stepped and every other one is stepped. Okay, so this one, so I turn it back on. Let's turn back our archway. This one here is stepped, right? Because look, take a look, right? So to make it stepped, to make this part stepped, we could deselect all and select, just do face select mode and select these faces. This is one way of doing it. And we could get rid of all these faces. So we say, get rid of all those faces, just X, and we want to delete the faces. So that's what it would look like. I recommend something like this starting off, because at least this way you have, that way to do it. But what we'd have to do if we did that is we have to recreate the faces and the connections if we did it this way. Okay, so this is definitely a way to do it. But again, we have to create all those connections again. In between. Let's get rid of this archway reference so we can see it a little bit more clearly. So see, I've kind of taken a bite out of this part, and that's kind of what I want, right? But we need to make the connections, and we're going to have some issues with these connections because I want to make a connection from here to here and from here to here. That's a face, and we need to make that face, the edges, we have to cut them at least 3 times. So there's a process for us to do this, okay? Just to let you know. Plus extra geometry I have to deal with later on, and a bunch of other stuff. How did I do the last part to merge the top? I just clicked on clipping. That's what I did. And I just came closer, closer, closer until I touched them. And then I let go, and then it clipped together. That's what it did. All right. So again, let's think about other faces to delete. We're going to do it all at once. So then these faces are also going to be kind of removed. So let's delete those faces, right? And this one is the last one to remove, all these, right? And remove those faces, undo, remove those faces, X to remove them. There we go. And this keystone, which is this face right here, these faces here, we're going to rotate them, right? Across the y-axis to make them a little bit flatter, to make that keystone flatter. And we're going to kind of pull these faces out to make the keystone kind of look a little bit more prominent. That's what it's going to look like. So that's the kind of shape that I want. And you can see we have issues because we have extra geometry. Okay, let's undo those changes. Okay. So we have a lot of extra geometry, guys, like a ton. You can see that we have like, a bunch of geometry here that needs to be kind of merged, especially in this one for some reason. I think I didn't do a great job on this part, but we want to merge some of the geometry together. And we want to do that sooner than later, right? Especially here, right? So the way to merge some of these errors together is, again, we want to kind of get rid of this whole edge. If you have an edge like this, where you have edges that are kind of this extra edge loop that's here, we want to get rid of this edge loop So I want to go to edge select mode, and I want to get rid of, I want to kind of shift select that entire edge loop, right? So that, and if it doesn't work because of edge issues, which is what I have, go around and guys, get rid of that extra support, because otherwise you're going to have challenges later. I'm going to have challenges later for sure. So I'm just going to dissolve that edge. Dissolving edges, again, what it does, it doesn't get rid of the geometry, the basic shape, but it does get rid of the extra stuff. And I got those extra edges in there because of the way I did my extrusions, right? So there I've selected everything to get rid of. And if I want to get rid of that edge, X, and then what I want to go is into dissolve edges. And you can see that that edge is gone for the most part. And we've got more edges to dissolve, but notice that it also created an issue where I have this really weird thing here. Take a look at that, right? Where I have this edge here and here. And if I click dissolve edges, it says, yes, I can try, but unfortunately that's not good. So I can also convert this to vertex vertices, and I can see if I can try and get rid of these verts. So dissolve vertices, but then you get something that looks like weird, that looks like this. And this is just a matter of the way I did it. So again, I got to fix these problems before I go on. This is my issue, not yours. Not yet. Don't merge by distance yet. I'm going to do that in a second. But I want to get rid of all the extra physical things that I have, my defects, before I move on. All right, because I have issues. And this could have been the way that I connected it, clipping, whatever. So I want to get rid of them. If you have issues like this, I highly recommend you get rid of these issues right away. So get rid of the edges, those verts, and same thing with these verts here. All I want to do is delete these vertices. There we go. All right, so now that once I've done that, I've got less problems. I don't see that there's a lot more. And then I'm going to do what you said, one, which is get rid of duplicate geometry by distance, because there's going to be issues. All right. So again, I'm select the entire model now, right? The entire model that I have. Remember, it's still mirrored left and right side. And I want to space and go merge by distance. And it shows me that I've removed 224 verts. This is good. Let's even move it out a little bit more instead of 0.01. Let's just make sure and go to 0.02 and then get rid of, for sure, these vertices. So any duplicate vertices are gone, okay? And you want to do this before you fix these top parts, okay? Save. So now we've deleted the duplicate geometry, hopefully. And now we can kind of work with the new geometry that we have in here. So we know we have a couple things to do. I'm going to create a face right at the top here and here and here, those top faces. So let's do that first. So we're going to say this and this and this one and this one, face, and do the same thing here. So face and that one over there. We have all those faces done. Nice, nice, right? And now what we need to do is we need to split those edges so that they have enough geometry to connect. I know this is extra work, but it is part of it if we want to make it look like the reference. If you don't care about the reference, that's okay. You can make your model look a little bit more simple. It's totally up to you. I'm going to go to the reference as much as possible and select all of these edges right away, all at the same time. And then I'm just going to subdivide them and make them 3 subdivisions, just like we did before. And then go to vertex select mode, and you can see that now we have the geometry need here, right? And we're just going to connect these faces here as well. So again, we'll start with these faces. So this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then connect. And it's a bit tedious, but it is what it is. Make sure you don't connect the wrong faces or the wrong verts is what I'm saying, because then you'll have a weird other issues. like that one, see? And selecting outside is actually a lot easier sometimes than selecting the actual object itself when you can't see. Right, so again, something like this one, and notice I'm selecting outside, close enough, but it does the selection for me. And same thing with this one. And because they're mirroring, well, beautiful thing is it happens on all sides. So we don't have to worry so much in terms of the way it's done. We're almost done. And we're keeping good flow, edge flow, because this way we have all the edges connected and they have good values where we have a lot of these edges. If I wanted to do a loop, cut, and slide later on, I could do that and adjust the model or whatever. So good kind of best practices, what we're looking for from you guys. Okay, this is going to be a little bit more challenging because we have this extra layer in here in the last one that I made. So I want to make another face here, another edge. And I want to cut this edge too into 3 pieces because I had that extra little layer in here, right? That's what I've done. So now we can do the same thing. And again, trickiness would be to create the edges we need for the faces without accidentally selecting the wrong face, because that would be, again, very bad. Just do your selection. Again, it doesn't take long. It's a little tedious, but it doesn't take that long to do. Oh, see, I messed up there. That one. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. Again, not too difficult. And honestly, I find that this kind of work is very different than programming in that you can tend to relax a little bit. I find it's like when I do this kind of thing, because you're just, it's another form of creation, but it's also very geometric, right? So again, subdivide, get 3 cuts. Oh, too many. Yeah, it can be. That's why I'm saying I think it's pretty good in terms of the way that you can do things. So, you know, it's just a matter of not freaking out or getting frustrated, which some people can get when they're not used to doing this work. That's why I want you guys to do this work, so that first of all, you understand the artist. I think one of the biggest things we have a problem with when we're dealing with our own selves in the industry is understanding the jobs of others. Like, what is that lazy artist doing? How come he can't do the model so quickly? And there's a lot of work, and I want you guys to be able to appreciate the fact that 3D art is hard to do, but it can be also very rewarding because you can create objects pretty much out of thin air, like literally, like, if we want to, we can convert this Blender model that we just made, we can convert it into a 3D print if we want to, and lots of really great stuff. Okay, let's kind of look at this from the front now. Deselect all, and I want to bring this edge or this vertex up so that it's in line with this one to create that keystone effect. So again, we want to just select this one, but I want to use I want to use the X-ray mode to do that, so I can select all those sides, right? And then I want to just bring this up so that it kind of is as close to the top as possible, like close to flat as we can get. And let's just zoom in there and try that again. pretty good. Remember, what we can do later is we can get rid of the mirror. And once we get rid of the mirror, I can merge these faces at the top here, right? To some degree. All right, and the same thing for the bottom. So if I bring that diagram back, let's bring that reference back in. You can see what we have. We have a pretty good approximation of some of the things that we wanted to do. So again, if I was to look at the archway, it's not perfect by any means. And I've created almost like a bit more than I wanted to down here for this archway, for the top part of the arch, right? I cut it maybe a little bit too much, but that's okay. Okay. Just to make it a little different looking. How does it look from the actual side? Let's take a look and see what it looks like from a layout perspective. It looks pretty good, right? This is what it's going to look like. Really different, you know, and that's okay. We're almost done. So we want that bottom part of the keystone to be something like this as well. So what I'm going to do is deselect all, grab that bottom part and pull it in so that it is flatter. And we got to be careful about how this is going to look, because if I want it to be like that extra part down here, which is kind of this part extruding outward, I need to extrude these faces, but we're going to have extra internal geometry when we do that, right? So again, remember that if I select all the faces here, it's both sides, because the keystone is kind of big. So if I go this one, this one, this one, this one, that is those are the faces that I want to extrude. And I'm going to have extra geometry. So E to extrude, enter, and then E to extrude down. You can see that that is going to be somewhat of an issue, but we're going to fix it. Okay, so you can see that it should be on both sides. Nice. And that's pretty good. But what we want also is to straighten it up a little bit. So we're going to rotate it across the y-axis, and just to get it so that it is somewhat flat at the bottom. Okay, so that's kind of what the keystone looks like. Keystone is kind of big and prominent, right? And that's good. And I think we've done everything we can for the mirror modifier. What I'd like to try and do now is merge some of these things in the middle as much as possible, because we have some faces in the middle now, like in here, where we need to get rid of those faces, because those faces are never going to be seen, these ones here. So we need to dissolve them. Right. So again, I want to go to the layout mode, and I want to just get rid of the arch. I don't want to see the reference anymore. Goodbye. And kind of go into that area here. And I want to go to the mirror modifier, and I want to click this thing and go apply and save. Please save your model at this point. I want to go back to modeling, and now we have access to every part of the geometry, which is good. And I want to just target those middle faces that are inside the model, those ones. We're never going to see those faces, and I want to press X, and I want to delete the faces that are inside there. But if I did that, then you're also going to have this additional edge, which is inside the model that you can't see, and I want to get rid of that too. So again, because of that extra geometry we made when we did that stuff. So I want to get rid of the edge. And you can see there's more because we have like a lot of duplicate geometry in here. We're going to take care of that in a sec too. There, so that's gone. Okay, that's gone. We can see that that's pretty good. Okay. And also let's check to see again with the normals. Let's make sure that the normals are all outside and not pointing on the inside. Don't want the normals on the inside. So I'm just quickly doing a scan of the normals on the outside of the model, just to make sure we can see like those extra faces I made, that they're all pointing outwards, not inwards, because that would be weird. Maybe I'll miss it. And if we do, we have to recalculate on the outside. But I think we're pretty good in terms of the way it was all done. Just looking at it from all angles here, just to inspect the model. I think it's pretty good. All right, and again, let's just we don't care about the normals anymore, but we want to scroll out. And what we want to do with this one is select all. And I want to do the same thing. I want to merge by distance. And we got rid of 15 more vertices at distance 0.0002. Okay, and once we've done that, we want to deselect all, go back to layout, save. And this is what the archway is going to look like. So I went spacebar and I just, my spacebar is merge by distance, but you notice that it says mesh merge by distance. So you can always go to layout, right, as an example. And I'm in the, if I went to modeling mode, here's modeling, I can go, I select all, and I go to mesh, and if you go to merge, and then by distance, that's the other way to do it. That's in edit mode. Okay. And there's my stuff. There's my you know, my model, and it's good. It's got quads. We don't have, I don't see any issues with it anywhere, which is pretty good. There's a lot of geometry. Okay, there's a lot of geometry, and we can certainly try and reduce some in some areas, especially like in here and stuff like this, where we can try and reduce some. I'm not going to do it. It's not a great amount of geometry, but it gives us enough. And I was going to do, just because of time, I was going to do materials and textures. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make materials. And just because there's no time for textures, because we ran out of time. It's what happens, right? Because I still have lots to do with Unity. So here is the first part. So save. And what this is giving us is a really cool little model. One thing to do is go back to layout mode. And I want to do Control A. And what Control A does, so I do Control A, and this is in object mode, not in edit mode. Again, Control A, we want to apply all of our rotation, location, and scale, like everything, all transforms. And what this does is it makes it so that the dimensions are a scale of 1, 1, 1, right? Which is what we want. We don't want to export this thing to to Unity with any kind of adjustments. So this is kind of our model, right? And again, you may like it, you may not, but I think it's not terribly bad for what we did, right? And it's kind of good and close to the Archway reference that we use, right? Okay, let's export this thing now to an FBX. I'll give it to you, and I'll put it up on eCentennial as well. So again, I'm going to File, Save, and I want to do a file export, and I'm going to export to FBX. And I'm going to call this the Archway FBX. There it is. So again, we can make it a capital A Archway. Doesn't matter. I did it differently last time too. I don't want to select everything, just selected objects only. And I only care about the mesh, not anything else. Okay, please make sure you have this. Export. And that makes the model exported. Okay. And now, one thing we didn't do is if you go into UV editing mode, you can see the UVs are all messed up, okay? So one thing we could do is fix the UVs for this thing. And I recommend some kind of fixing because this is messed, guys. Look at this. This is insane. So again, what you could do is in UV editing mode, and I've already exported one version of my model, worst case scenario. I can do an unwrap, and you can see that there's no differences. But if I do an unwrap, and if I do smart UV project, at very minimum, you should probably do something that looks like this, at the very minimum. Or at least this way you have islands for all your UVs, and you know anything we can see is pretty good. At the very minimum. Otherwise, what's going to happen is any materials you put on this thing or textures will be all skewed and messed up. Okay, so that's you looking at the entire model. You can see what it's done. It's kind of created a bunch of islands, and it's pretty much the same almost everywhere. Are they perfect? Hell no. If you want to do it even more perfect, you can do what we did before, which is adjusting the UVs by looking at it from different angles. That is definitely going to be more realistic, but this is not terribly skewed. It's not going to be terribly skewed. Okay. Now let's save that, go back to layout mode, and we can extract that again. So File, Export, Export FBX one more time. We want to get my selected mesh. All right, as an example only. And I want to export the Archway FBX one more time. Export. There we go, with new UV information. Okay, let me give you that UV now. So, or that object. So again, into this, the Archway FBX is this. I'm gonna give you that. So you can use that in Blender, in Unity, I mean. And I'll put this Archway FBX up on eCentennial as well for those people who are going to use it. I have a marble texture that I kind of included. Okay. Do UV mapping have an effect on the object in Unity other than the material? I mean, not really, just the way it looks. The lighting is going to be affected for sure. If you have your UVs all messed up, like if they're all crisscrossed like that and skewed and everything else, you need to make it somewhat normal. I have a marble texture. You know what? Maybe we can just do this. So I already have a marble texture for you guys. I'll download the texture and I'll put it into our sandbox. Hold on. And let's go back to Blender for a second. And if I was going to apply the marble texture, let's see how this is going to look with a UV unwrap. So how do I do it again? Remember, I went to the object in layout mode. Let's switch it from principal BSDF down to diffuse, just to make it simple, a simplified version of the shader, because it's not going to pass into Unity anyway. And then I want to go into color, and I want to go into image texture. There it is. Notice it turns black, but I can open up a texture, which is my marble texture, and press open image, which turns it like this. So you can see it's not terribly bad, but it needs to be made way bigger than this because it looks like it's a bunch of spots right now, right? And that's because of the UV unwrapping that I did, right? So we need to change the UV modes one more time, sorry. And I want to go and also put in a texture slot. Our texture right now is not the right one, right? So there's the texture we're going to use. And so what I want to do is, instead of the Archway reference, I want the marble to be put in there. That's the one I want for this one. I want to also save that. And what I want to do is inside of UV editing mode, here's UV editing mode. You can see that this is the islands that I did with a UV unwrap smart UV project. Right, I'm going to select all these and I'm going to scale them up a bunch of times, like maybe something like a scale of, let's try 2 everywhere. So 2, 2, 2. Right. And to visualize this, because we should try and visualize it before I move on, I'm just going to turn viewport shading on and UV editing mode and just zoom in to see what that looks like. And if you think that's still too big, we can zoom it out even more. Let's make it 444. So it's not really that apparent what it looks like. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see skewing. So you can go to the model itself and you can see that my marble texture is not terribly bad. Looks okay. It's not terribly good, but it's not terribly bad. There we go. There's the texture. Save. And let's export that one again. One more time. File, export, and export FBX. There's my FBX, the Archway FBX. And I got all this. And I'm going to export. Awesome. And let's go back into layout mode, file, save. And so I've got the blend file as well. Let's put both the blend file and the FBX file up online, and I'll give you the FBX file one more time. So here's the Archway FBX one more time. Sorry about that. And let's get that Archway blend and the Archway FBX up on eCentennial, just so that way we have it. So I'm gonna just drag and drop it. So that way you have it. So there's the Archway blends. And there it is. Edit properties in place, archway.blend. And the archway.fbx. And then we'll take a short break and come back and do everything in Unity. So Archway FBX, there we go. Edit properties in place. And so that way you have everything you need here as well. Questions? What are your thoughts, concerns? Anything that you would do differently with this thing? We made a simple archway. That was what we wanted to do in this video, right? And we did it. It looks, you might think this is not simple, but actually it's very simple. We didn't add a lot of detail here. We could have added a lot more. We could have added scratches. We could have added multiple layers of textures. We could have made some imperfections, chipped the, the model in different places and all that stuff. Lots of stuff to make it more realistic and interesting looking. But I think this is probably pretty good for what we're doing, because we're not artists. We are programmers, but we want to understand how art's created. We want to bring things in. And sometimes as a team, we want to be able to make this good. Let's see what Kevin's got. So Kevin's got an archway that he created. Let's take a look. I always like to look at other people's stuff because it's really cool. So Archway downloads. Here it is. So Kevin made this. Hey, look at that. It's pretty good. Actually, it's probably better than mine. I really like what you did there with the stuff. You made it more roundedness, added more rounded parts, and you made this part really nice. I really like what you did there. Right. So Kevin did his version. That's his, and more roundedness than mine. Mine is more kind of, kind of stepped. Yours is a little bit more round and smooth. Nice. Like it. Okay. This is good. Okay. And this is what we want to do. We want to try and understand how to make basic geometry. This is what we're doing here. We're making different pieces. We could spend the entire semester, if I had you for another semester, you spend the entire semester making tile sets, 3D tile sets, which is what we're really doing for Unity, where we can put stuff together and create a whole tile set. And we can actually put it up on the top part. Looks like a gear cog. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Which is kind of very geometric, which is what we might want, right? So it's not bad. All right. So let's stop here for this video. We're sitting here at 2:26. We'll take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 2:35. And when we come back, we will bring this into Unity and all that stuff. Okay. And I'm just going to stop recording here.